Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you, Rose. I know you are joining, and thank you our brilliant and highly interesting speakers. This is Dr. Mona Yunus. I am talking from California. I have been working in the area of education emergencies for over 10, 15 years now. And because I have such a huge passion and a deep interest in the field of education and emergencies, I have proceeded with a PhD in education and social justice. And after that, I became an independent consultant for international organizations until I finally decided to work through a consulting firm because I found out that I have brilliant experts and a huge team around me that could really help with bigger projects, more impactful endeavors, and innovative solutions. Therefore, I started Beyond Borders, and this is the very first event Beyond Borders is organizing, and we hope to have it as a series that is discussing education and emergency issues. I'm very happy to have you with me, all of you today. And we will, without further ado, we will start. We will start with our first speaker, Raksha Alawi. Raksha Alawi is talking from Jordan, and she has a very, very long experience in monitoring and evaluation. She has done that for organizations, UN organizations, international NGOs, European Union, for governmental organizations, specifically the Ministry of Education in Jordan. Her expertise
Dr. Mona.
includes monitoring and evaluation action plan,
Dr. Mona.
quality KPIs. Yes.
The voice is echoing. If you have,
Okay.
your voice is not very well. If we can change this headphone, it will.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go on. Yeah, much better. Okay.
And the expertise of Raksha Alawi extended from just little NGOs to UN agencies and international NGOs, and she has done incredible work in the field of establishing quality KPIs and outcome indicators, as well as project evaluation and reporting to guide decision making and building the capacity of project managers and staff throughout different MENA region countries. And she will talk today about, yes, Raksha, tell us, what are you going to talk about today?
Thank you, Mona, for the introduction. Mainly, I'm working on measuring the quality of education, in specific related to the education of Syrian refugees in host countries. I will share with you a brief presentation just as an introduction, what we've been doing for the EU and Ministry of Education in Jordan as a case study for the last 7 years.
Before you start, Dr. Raksha, I will just ask everyone if we have some questions, you can write it down in the chat box. I will be the moderator, inshallah, for the webinar, and I would love to welcome everyone. You can write down your questions in the chat box, and it will be recorded. After two speakers, we will have 5 minutes for discussing some questions. Thank you.
Can you see the presentation now?
Yes.
Yeah, in brief, what we'll be doing for Jordan, we've been monitoring the quality of education since the opening of formal schools in Jordan for Syrian in 2013 till this year. We've been focusing mainly about Syrian refugees, and due to the fact that the ministry was interested in the methodology because it has the quantitative and the qualitative part, they they were interested to have the methodology and implemented by the ministry in order to empower and strengthen the capacity of the ministry to measure the quality of education. So what we've been doing, we've been monitoring the schools since 2014 till 2019. Starting from 2019, the Ministry of Education started using this methodology. Mainly, we've been working on the formal education, focusing on public schools in Jordan, hosting Syrian refugees, and then expanded it to the nationwide assessment consists of 100 schools in order to have a quality score for the public education in public schools. Similar methodology implemented in Jordan and Lebanon in a regional project for the non-formal education. We modify it in order to have the quality score for the non-formal education in Jordan and Lebanon using the same assessment framework. What we be doing in this methodology, we'll be doing desk research, reading all the results of the exams and what's been done as assessment for the education during the period of assessment. Then we do field visits where we do focus group discussion, interviews, lessons observation, review of school documents, in addition to administration of perceptional questionnaire. Based on these data we collect, we try to generate a quality score, what we call it QPS, quality performance score, where it reflects the quality of teaching and learning, the progress and attainment, personal development and well-being, in addition to overall effectiveness of leadership and management. By having all this data, using certain descriptors, we will be grading each domain and each indicator. And by grading these indicators, we get the quality score where the school or any indicator will be graded 1, which means that this is the best practice or the best performing school, and the ones graded 4, it's the lowest performing schools or the lowest performance or best or the poor practice. And by having all these grades, we then classify schools to 3 bands, A, B, C, where A is the good schools, P is the adequate, or C is the schools in need of improvement. This methodology implemented during face-to-face teaching, similar to it implemented in 2020-21 during COVID-19, where we have the same methodology with some modification through collecting data. So for example, focus group discussion replaced by phone interviews. Perceptional survey was done using hard copies. Now we do it e-copies and e-survey in order to collect the same data. We monitor the access of students on the learning platforms, to which extent students are engaged with homeworks, to which extent teachers are providing feedback to students in order to know exactly what they need to improve. So thank God the methodology was able to capture all the information in two approaches, in the 2 scenarios, face-to-face and the distance learning. The lessons learned, what we learning during the last 7 years, and more or less it's the same lessons learned for the distance learning, similar to the one for the face-to-face. First of all, meeting the quality, meeting the equity challenge depends on the data, detailed and focused action from the responsible education authority. Whatever we have recommendations or interventions in mind in order to improve the quality of education, we need the ministry, or we need the education sector to be behind it and fostering it in order to achieve the quality. The best external support for teacher is learning from each other by establishing community learning, by having peer-to-peer support, and it was the same for the distance learning. School leadership matters. The high-performing schools are the ones who have effective leadership and management. We observe schools for 2 years where some of the good schools, whenever they have decrease or less quality grade, are the schools who have change on the leadership. So whenever you have a good leadership, you have a good school and good education. So whenever we have a group of good schools, we have better quality education. And this is the main challenge we face in camps in Jordan, for example, because we don't have not experience or effective leadership and management in camps. And if we don't have effective assessment for learning, if we don't have national assessments, if we don't have standardized exams and not counting only on school exams, we will not be able to scan and cater the learning needs. School exams is good, but not sufficient enough in order to assess the attainment and progress for the children. What we learned also that great teaching and learning is not enough, because school need also to focus on the personal development and the well-being of children. Good schools, good performing schools are having confident learners. Students are confident, they speak better, they read better, they think independently, and all these kind of issues related to the skills they need, or what we call it 21st century skills. Access to technology is necessary, but still insufficient. We've been saying all the time that having the ICT labs, for example, is something, and the use of ICT in teaching and learning is something else. So we have the means, we have the resources, but to which extent the technology is being used in teaching and learning. So, and one of the factors that is not helping, that the teachers, unfortunately, they don't have enough ICT skills and IT literacy in order to deliver these skills to children. Parents' involvement is a key factor for school improvement, and this is all over the world, not only in our region. Effective support for girls is a must, and it should be prioritized, including the now, because we are opening the schools again after almost 1.5 years away from schools, this should be also priority. Plus, giving the chance and the opportunities for girls to be exposed to all kinds of activities in order to develop the personality and the learning skills. Improving the quality of educations requires constant monitoring. So it's not like, okay, if we have good school, we stop visiting them or we stop monitoring these schools. No, even good schools need monitoring, because easily, especially in contexts like host countries or like crisis context, with less support or with few challenge or less challenge, they will easily have less quality or less focus on quality. So we need monitoring for good schools and the poor performing schools, and not only the poor schools. When it comes to perception, and this is mainly what we learned from, and it was what we learned during the 7 years, and it was challenged from donors. Always they challenge us by saying that it's your judgment, even if you are 3 assessors, 4 assessors, and you have a framework, still, is it objective or not? And what we did, just to add extra validity for our findings, we had the perceptional survey distributed for all students and children, and some of the parents, if they are interested, focusing on 20 quality areas, which included in all our work, regardless of the data collection, and asking about these quality areas. And by having additional input from parents, children, and students, which they were not involved 100% in the monitoring activities, gave us extra support and confidence in our judgment. On all our monitoring activities, the perceptual survey confirmed the findings generated by interviews and focus group discussions and provided additional support evidence to the observation made by the assessors and the external consultants. And usually, the perceptual survey fulfilled its primary purpose in order to provide means of triangulation and validation of data. So this is what we learned during the 7 years by implementing this methodology, mainly for host community, vulnerable host community, and refugees in Jordan and Lebanon. I don't know if I still have time, or we can just move to the other presentation.
Yes. Thank you, Raja, very much for this very insightful presentation. We really learned a lot, and I wrote a lot of points here, and I can see a lot of incoming questions, but we will postpone those after our second speaker. Really, a lot of very interesting questions. Time was perfect. Thank you, Raja. Time was really perfect. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. We will turn now to our second speaker, Gabriela Müller, who is going to talk about higher education in emergencies through innovation and creation. Gabriela has an academic background in education emergencies, communications, and advocacy, and is currently working as a research associate at the University of Geneva, having recently coordinated a fully remote project focusing on innovative higher education in emergencies in Kakuma camp in Kenya. Thank you, Gabriela. The floor is yours. You can start.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Mona, for the very complete introduction. Just in advance, if I suddenly disappear, it's the internet connection, as many of us know. So yes, exactly as Dr. Mona was saying, I am a research associate for the Faculty of Psychology and Education at the University of Geneva. And today I would like to talk to you about a project I recently coordinated as part of InZone. That is a project of the University of Geneva promoting innovative higher education in Kakuma refugee camp and Kalo Bay settlement in Kenya and Azraq refugee camp in Jordan. So I come from a very different stance than Raja, so it will be interesting to maybe have a discussion afterwards.
Okay.
So I will talk to you about the Uvumbuzi Tech Challenge. Uvumbuzi, for those who know Kiswahili, means innovation, tech as in technology, which was a pedagogic problem-solving exercise based on the design thinking methodology. That's the human-centered approach that should actually be applied more in community-based projects, or more in projects targeting the marginalized communities, because it gives them empowerment and it gives them ownership about the solutions that are being implemented in their spaces. The idea was to create technology-supported solutions through working together, researching, analyzing, collaborating between students in Kakuma refugee camp and engineering students from Nairobi. There were 7 problem areas identified by students. They did kind of a needs assessment. They asked around their neighbors and so on, what problems target you the most, and 7 problem areas came up. And through a time span of 2 months or 3 months, more or less, they worked on creating tech-supported solutions to these problems, but more about that right away. So our objectives from InZone was obviously to empower refugees, to tell them you have a say in that. We don't know your situation, you know it best. And by collaborating with engineering students, we will have the best mix of both expertise and also experience, obviously. to create technology-supported solutions, at the same time conduct higher education in the end, because we are a higher education institution, so it should be academic and research-oriented. And for us, it was important to spot some potential future students for in-zone courses. At the same time, we wanted to see what the interest was of the potential students in Kakuma and Kalobaye for new engineering courses that we will develop in the near future. So I told you already a bit about InZone, that program of the University of Geneva, part of which I coordinated this project in the past few months, but you can obviously look it up on the internet. So that's the situation. We have defined project areas: water, waste, agrotechnology, cooking, power, teenage pregnancies, and menstrual health, fully identified by the people in Kakuma and Kalobaye. 7 teams are around 7 people from both Kakuma, Kalobaye, that's the settlement nearby, and students from Kenyatta University and IEEE, a very large engineering institution in Nairobi. We mobilized mentors, design thinking experts, and technical experts from renowned academic institutions and NGOs, because we do not have the knowledge about how to conduct waste management in the best way, right? So we brought them together. Obviously, the project had to be fully remotely, not only because the refugees and the engineering students are not in the same spot, but also because we were managing the whole thing from Geneva, and also with our in-zone team in Kakuma refugee camp. Last but not least, the idea was to prototype the solutions in a fabrication laboratory that was installed in Kakuma refugee camp at the very last moment, because there were some shipment issues from Boston about the challenges later. This was our timeline. I don't know if some of you know about design thinking, but the idea is to go through an iterative process of empathizing, problem definition, ideation, and prototyping, and testing. This was an agenda that had to change a lot all the time due to the different challenges that we faced. But this is how it looked. I can share the slides later on. Here already, just some perspectives on the communication. So first we did a flyer in English, and then we were told by our 2 focal points in Kakuma, which are on the right on the picture, that obviously we need to translate the flyers in Arabic, in Kiswahili, and so on, to mobilize students to participate in the tech challenge. But again, this was just one of the many issues that we had to face in that very short process of the delivery or implementation of the challenge. So the problem statements according to each area are there, and departing from that, the students really sat together, did empathy interviews, analyzed the interviews with their communities, and went through the full process of researching on existing solutions, defining which solution may fit best, conducting interviews again, and so on and so forth. Just very briefly on the solutions. So we had, for example, Team Power that developed a system for monitoring a battery's remaining life due to power and electricity issues in Kakuma. That is very important to know how to do that. Team Aqua developed a water filter. Team Waste Management developed in 1 week an educational mobile application to inform about the different types of waste, and so on. Yeah, about why it is important to manage waste the right way. Team Cooking developed a hybrid solar cooker. Obviously, a lot of sun around in Kakuma that can be used for free. team, Teenage Pregnancies and Menstrual Health, both developed an awareness and educational mobile application on obviously preventing teenage pregnancies and what menstrual health actually is. And Team Agrotech printed with a 3D printer parts for a drip irrigation system that would allow to use water in the fields in a more efficient and sustainable way. So sorry, these pictures don't seem to work. Obviously, the added value for the students after the process of 2 or 3 months, we were working together, daily Zoom sessions of a few hours and a lot of exchanges were research and analytical skills, design thinking knowledge, project development skills. They were exposed to new collaboration tools. We mainly collaborated on WhatsApp, which was very uncommon for me, for example, who's used to education in Europe and working in Europe. Zoom, that we have faced so many issues with Zoom. Google Suite could be used, but very difficult for the people in Kakuma and Kalobe because it consumes a lot of data. Then a specialist knowledge, newly found interest in the different technical areas, maybe an idea of what they would like to do in the future, communication and an interest to continue being educated in technology-related areas. Challenges, and that's maybe interesting for the future discussion. I put down design thinking Fab Labs. What? Because we were not aware that after delivering a training on design thinking that took 4 weeks, there would still be many questions that we would not know about, because the communication culture is simply different, and with a group of students from very different cultures, where maybe sharing questions is not the way to do things, is difficult. We gave as much ownership as possible to our colleagues in Kakuma so that they could deliver the lessons and we would stay in the background. But this is just probably something you have encountered after we explain things in the way we are used to do it. It does not mean that it will be clear to a different audience. Then students' background, previous knowledge, communicating in a refugee camp, like how to produce a flyer, how to print it, how much text should be on a flyer, what will be understood and how. Electricity, internet data, as we heard before as well. Then technological technological skills, remote collaboration, the context. I put physical and psychological because at some point it was announced that Kakuma refugee camp would be closed, and that affected the students' mental health a lot. Obviously, they were very worried about that. And COVID, malaria, things like that we could not see coming, floods, and so on. Then bottom up, sorry, yes, 2 minutes. I was watching the time. I started. Okay. So I will just close with education-related challenges because that's most important maybe in this round. So about training delivery, are there any best practices to conduct such training, such apparently innovative training in that context? Is the didactical approach we took suitable to the context we work in, or the context, because the refugees come from different backgrounds? Can we legitimize conducting an academic project in a non-traditional way, like with the design thinking methodology? And in the end, can experiential learning be given more space in the traditional sphere of education in emergencies? I know there are so many edtech approaches everywhere, but are they actually working? Or is that just a nice buzzword? But in the end, we have to do things the old way, to say so. Yeah, just some open questions. You see some more points here, but I will close now. And Yeah,
Very rich,
happy
very
to
rich and very
hear.
eye-opening questions.
Thank you.
Asante means
Asante means thank you in
good.
Kiswahili. My very modest Kiswahili that I'm improving now.
Swahili. Okay. Thank you very much, Gabriela, for your time. It was amazing and very knowledgeable presentation. Yani, I feel it's very rich with very meaningful experience. Let me describe it this way. Very meaningful experience. Okay, let's just take 5 minutes for questions. I will ask Raja 2 questions, and maybe Gabriela, I will ask you 2 questions. I just would love also to remind everyone that I will put now in the chat box a business bowl link that we need everyone to go to this link and write down your information, your name, some questions, your name, since when you have been in this field, and some information about everyone participating in this webinar, so we can keep in contact with you. Okay, I will put just the link now, and let's take some questions. Dr. Raja, what's the importance of teachers to determine the quality of school? A question came to you.
Yeah, thank you for the question, but teachers, they don't determine the quality. Lots of tools and lots of data determine the quality, but they have the right to have the voice. It's part of triangulation. We need to know if there is professional development. Is it continuous? Is it effective? Do they use it inside the classroom? Do they participate in school improvement process? Do they communicate with parents? All this information, it's part of the quality areas we look at. They don't determine, but they contribute to data that give us solid judgment that there is a school improvement plan, there is professional development which is consistent, continuous, and effective. So this is the answer for this question. Do you want me to go through the other one?
I have a question here, came to me. How can you describe the challenges or the obstacles that faced you while applying this methodology?
It depends on the phases. I say that it's been 7 years with the ministry. At the beginning, the main challenge, frankly, was the ministry. Really? And they said, yeah, it's something new for them. I don't know if you know the inspection process in UK. It's more or less simple mini inspection, what I used to do. And I had to invite lots of people from the ministry to go with me and listen to everything and see everything and agree on the grades and see the whole process. It took me like 2.5 years. Then they were very strong supporter to the methodology. And by the end, when they saw that all donors were asking about it and use the quality score as indicator in their funding, they were excited to learn more, and we handed over the methodology for them based on this experience. Yes. And now we have a strong and good relationship with the ministry whenever they have any change, especially when they came to COVID. They felt, okay, can we use the same methodology or not? And it was perfectly fine in both scenarios.
And this is exactly what we were speaking about when we started the planning for this webinar. We thought that the word crisis could be applied in different aspects. COVID is one of them.
But still, if you have the data, it's fine. One of the other issues, especially related to the Syrian refugees, and especially in camps, one of the obstacles was the low expectations from families and children. So we looking for certain standards, and because we are looking for the quality, we can just say that having the resources is good. We need to have good implementation and good use of resources and all this kind of thing. One of the issues we faced, the low expectation from parents, because for them having school is the best. Halas, this is what you need.
I mean that they were not working on their kids getting better performance, more focusing, getting more grades.
Yes.
Like
this was
we're done. We're having school and that's enough.
Yeah, having the access is something, and quality of education is completely different issue.
Yes.
This is what we faced, because when you talk to parents, they are extremely happy, but when you look at the results of the students, how the teaching inside the classrooms, it's something different. So
yes, and this will lead us to my question, and maybe the last question for you. I know we're running out of Mona, but I would love to ask you about this. I'm working as a student counselor, and my question to you is, how does, you said a very good word for me, the school exams are not sufficient to evaluate the teaching and learning. So then how can we evaluate real teaching and learning happening inside the classroom? Sometimes I feel like we are the school leaders only who can realize that it's not only about exams, learning happening here.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, for communities or for parents or for paperwork, they want numbers.
School exams is good, but insufficient. School exams, are they age appropriate? Is it catering all the needs and the abilities? This is something we need to keep in mind. So when we judge the quality of teaching and learning, we attend the lessons, we have certain issues we look at, and based on this, we judge the lessons. So this is something we try to judge the progress, what the children can do by end of each lesson. Did they achieve the outcomes of the lesson? So this is something, school exam is something also we look at, but we also, and this is one also related to the challenges. At the beginning, Syrian refugees, for example, they were not part of the national assessment in Jordan, in 13, 14. So we were looking only at the data of school and what we see inside the school. We were extremely lucky by having involving the Syrian refugees, involving Syrian refugees in the national assessment, in the international exams, where we have accurate, different assessments, standardized, focusing on skills and not only the knowledge. And by here, we judge the progress inside the lessons by end of each lesson, and we look at the attainment, what the children can do and can do by end of the year or by end of the cycle. So this is what we should keep in mind as a leaders, and doing the diagnostic assessment in order to have plans and monitoring this progress and to which extent our students are making progress from 1 year to year. So this is what I meant by school exam is insufficient in order to judge the quality of teaching and learning.
Okay, thank you very much, Raja. It was very beneficial even for me. Thank you. Okay, we have some questions for Gabriela. Gabriela, this program is applied only in the camp. How can you make sustainable use of the learning outcomes or the products coming by the students? You showed us some interesting results or products. It's amazing. This application for the mobile, something as a cooker, I think. Are you taking like to market it?
Yeah, well, we had to tell you. You don't know how many times we had to tell the students that the idea is not to create something, to create their social enterprise through our project, because our objective was really academic, to give them academic skills. What they do afterwards, what they do right now, which is very nice to see, is that they are being visited by NGOs that heard about the Tech Challenge and about some very excellent students, and are asking them how they did the app so fast, how they can continue developing it and so on. And that is really nice, because we gave them maybe like the start shot, like the push, the start push. On the other hand, it was about seeing about their interest in engineering technology, because I think many students are frustrated. They know a lot, they see the problems, but they cannot explain them to anyone, or people will not listen because the organizations, they found the solution for themselves. And in the end, the Kakuma refugee camp has about 200,000 inhabitants, so it's large enough. They should not export the solution as of yet, but they should be doing things for their communities. That's the idea. But it's moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gabriela. Okay, I'm reminding you again, I put the link for business card exchange in the chat box, and now we're moving to Mirey. Dr. Mona.
We are very happy to have Mirey with us today, and Mirey is going to talk about an opportunity for change in emergencies, active learning through technology. And Mirey has a very interesting background because Mirey is a postdoctoral research fellow at University of Bergen. Mirey's PhD research investigated the role of ICT in rebuilding education in areas of conflict. The particular case under study is the Syrian conflict. She recently joined the Department of Global Public Health and Primary Care at the University of Bergen. Thank you, Mirey. The floor is yours now.
Thank you, Mona, and thank you, Beyond Borders, for the invitation. I'll try to speak clearly, but maybe a bit quiet because I have a baby sleeping, so I'm not going to wake him up. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if you can. All right, I think this one. Can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Yeah, so for today, I was thinking it would be more with like practical examples of what I've done before, like through my thesis, and then because before getting the postdoc position, I was working also as an independent consultant for education and emergencies, and I mainly worked with Mosaic Education NGO. Maybe you know it. The idea that I would like to share with you is that in the situation of emergencies, we have always an opportunity to do something different. And as one of my key agents in my thesis, my fieldwork, she was a teacher in the refugees camps in Lebanon. She told me that actually the war destroyed everything for them. And all the pre-established norms. So they found inside the chaos that there is an opportunity for change, the opportunity to be creative and also to overcome the destiny. And actually, this quote was one of the most important quotes that I got from my fieldwork, because it is a motivation to do something about what's going on. So. Before, I would like maybe to share like a very short definition and basic concepts of what it means, active learning. So active learning is the strategies or pedagogical strategies that we use in a term of learning and teaching, where we have the student in the center, and where the student is in charge of its own learning through meaningful activities. And the students, they think about and apply what they have learned in a deliverable and construct to passive learning. So there is a difference between the learner only receiving and the learner when it's actively involved in their own learning. So here is a graph that is a bit old from a publication for Save the Children in 2003, where they give compare a bit between the traditional methodology and when we are using the active learning. So the children are asked to believe in the traditional teaching, the children are asked to believe what they are taught. Then so they begin to understand the world, and one day maybe they can perhaps act and on that knowledge. But when we are working with the active learning pedagogy, the children are asked to act on what they know, first of all, so they better understand the world around them, and develop their own beliefs based on their experience. So this difference is very important because, for example, in the case of the Syrian crisis, the education in Syria, yes, true, it was one of the best in the maybe in the region, but was mainly based on traditional teaching. So there, I found out in my fieldwork and later in my work that actually there's an opportunity, maybe on a small scale, to change this pedagogy and try to work with the children where they are the center of the teaching. So in the active learning in education emergency, is important in improving the quality of teaching in emergency settings, as people, objects, and events from daily life are incorporated into lessons, learning, and will become increasingly relevant and engaging. It means when we are teaching and we put the children in the context of what's going on. So everything is making reference to what's going on around them, about their environment and their past, present, and also future. Children can learn best as they do things. They solve problems, find out how things work, and ask questions, try out new ideas, and practice new skills. So in the idea of an opportunity for change, I'm going to share with you a few examples maybe from what I have learned. I can see that the active learning is happening and helping in 4 main categories: in basic education, in language learning, and also in teacher training, but also in the psychosocial and mental health. In basic learning, for example, this is an example of what's happening with, because Jusur was one of my case studies. Jusur, maybe most of you maybe know people who are working with the Syrian crisis. Jusur is a local NGO, was created by expats, and they were one of the first to offer basic education, non-formal, of course, to Syrian children in Lebanon and the refugees camps. So in the case of Jusur, they found out that actually one of the main problems for them was that the teachers and also the children, they're suffering from conflict, and they are aggressive in dealing with each other. So they wanted to change something. So they got a counselor, and they worked with the children in order to kind of resolve the conflict happening, so they can be able to focus and to continue, be motivated to continue learning. When they tried using like laptops and also tablets, they managed to get somehow attract the interest of the children, but was not very efficient in the way of their learning. So what they had to do in that case, they started working in small groups with the students, and they started to ask them about their interests. So they were involved actively in their own teaching, and they found that first of all, the motivation increased, but also the children themselves, they somehow calmed down, and they were interested in to collaborate together. Before they were fighting somehow, and then at the end of the year, they were collaborating and they became friends. So in that case, they were trying to implement new methods of teaching. So they worked a lot on teacher training, so they can collaborate together and focus on the students. But at the same time, they used Gabriela, you mentioned WhatsApp, but WhatsApp is like also when I did my thesis a long time ago, I was also surprised that actually they were using WhatsApp to learn, to communicate, to teach, and also they used it in the crisis again in COVID. No, so it's using innovative. So I will call it innovative use of existing technologies. But also WhatsApp was very helpful to improve the communication between students and teachers, but also with parents. Another example that I would like to share is when you focus on the students, so they can also be creative and they can create their own somehow educational materials. This case is also one of my case studies. That is initiative called Nafham. They do online educational materials that are it's a crowd teaching. It means that anyone can develop any video explaining the it's for formal education, but it is available for free for everyone. In that case, we have here two girls that they became they produced more than 100 educational videos by themselves. They create everything, so they look for the information. They write also their script, and also they do at home the videos where they use the green background, so they can also implement the interactive materials for their videos. I'm talking a bit fast, so I can maybe share as much as I can. So if you want to know more about any of those examples, you can ask me if you want later. And then another example is was Mosaic Education, which is the DOGME toolkit. The DOGME toolkit is DOGME is a methodology that is student-centered, and we collaborated with the founder of the DOGME methodology, and the toolkit was planned to be delivered in person. But then COVID came, and then we used the same methodology that we have, pedagogy that is in DOGME to train the teachers. So the teachers, they were trained in a very active way. So it was a learner-driven dialogue. And then we used the Zoom mainly to do it, and also we used the Moodle, the learning management system, to put the asynchronous learning. And this toolkit transformed the English language learning for refugees by supporting teachers to make it communicative, human, and engaging, online or also in the classroom. In fact, the impact of this toolkit was like 80% actually of the trainee teachers reported that this technique led to increased classroom participation. So it was very, very good impact on the motivation of their learners. At the same time, the students were more attended classes, so we increased the attendance. And 100% of the teachers, they used the technique and were able to adapt it with the existing program. So, and then also 92% of the trainee teachers saw the techniques as very relevant to their context. I think this example, they are now trying to develop, actually, I think, an app. I'm not working anymore with Mosaic because I'm working also with active teaching, but in a different context. And it was one of the most amazing experience, actually, to see how the was very simple. Like simple is a bit maybe not the right word, but simple techniques, you can make a big difference. Now, when it comes to the psychosocial and mental health, again, one of the examples was with teacher training on how to work with the students and how to try to support them in an informal way. So also they were using what is the self-assessment tools that is recording themselves, for example, in the classroom, and then watching it together with their colleagues, and also peer assessment in a way to be able to identify any problems and maybe in their way of treating the children, how they can improve it, how they can focus more on them, and how it can be helpful for everyone. And this is not have time for it. So as the change actually is happening when the students are actively engaged in their learning, and when the education is dialogic. Dialogic means that they also have the right to participate when they can be heard, and then when the education is personalized. The students are motivated to reflect. That's very important also for them to reflect on their own learning, search and learn skills that are helpful outside the educational institution. When this is happening, we can have for sure a change in the society, and then the learning has a social impact and more sustainable than in traditional way. The complex course is devastating, but also provides an opportunity for change and development on the social and educational level. Many information and communication technology initiatives are worth further studies and could be expanded on a larger scale. And then the policies and legislation still preventing sometimes a free and sustainable access to quality education. However, access to any kind of education is crucial for the stability and welfare of children. Yeah, I think that's it for my side. Thank you. I don't know if I have any questions. I think I did it a very fast note, so I went maybe 10 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Now.
Thank you very much, Mirey, for your presentation, your time. If I'm considering myself as a learner in this webinar, my only reflection will be that we need more time next time. Because it's
Yes.
knowledgeable and insightful. Thank you very much. And recommendations are to the point.
Thank you, Mirey. And
we will tell you the questions coming to you after Raksha, please.
yes. Mirey, thank you very much for your presentation, and it leads very smoothly to the next one, because you ended
I cannot hear. Is it only me or?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear
we can
me
hear
now?
you, Dr. Mona, but your voice is going and coming back.
Okay. Okay, maybe I was back leaning to the chair. Thank you, Mirey. It was very, very informative, and it transforms very smoothly to the next presentation, because you ended by saying this is what we should be doing if we need some kind of social impact. And actually, social impact, this is the field of Raksha. Raksha likes to talk about social innovation, and actually the title of what she is going to speak about is Mindful Social Innovation for Education in Emergencies. And Raksha is the co-founder of Global Minds Collectives, and she focuses on education emergencies, PSS, which is psychosocial support, social innovation, entrepreneurship, peace building. She supports the holistic reintegration of war-affected youth and children associated with armed forces into schools through actions interweaving human-centered design. And we are coming back now with the human-centered design to what Gabriela was telling us, with healing and well-being, including, of course, psychosocial support and social emotional learning and mindfulness. Thank you, and the floor is yours, Raksha. Raksha, you are muted.
Thank you so much, Mona. I'm just preparing my PowerPoint here to make sure it can be seen correctly. All right, here we go. Thank you so much, Mona, for the introduction, and as well to Beyond Borders for the invitation. And hello, everyone. My name is Raksha Sule. I'm the co-founder of the Global Minds Collective, and today I'm going to be talking about mindful social innovation for education in emergencies. And just to get us started off here, I actually want to pose a question to you. Oh, and sorry, I think I'm hearing some static in the background. Is that just me?
No.
Okay, no static. Great. Okay, great. So I just want to pose these questions to you to get us started. And those questions are, who are you? And what is your purpose? And over the past 5 years of working within the social innovation space, in which I intersect my work with education, mental health, and peace building, these questions are the ones that take audiences and my students aback the most. They always ask why. Why do we need to answer this? And as social innovators or practitioners, as learners and students, we bring together ourselves, the learners and the communities, and have a very focused goal of co-creating to make a difference out there, or to alleviate suffering out there, or to transform our complex system challenges out there. But very rarely do we, in parallel, have the goal of co-presencing, or being and becoming to make a difference in here, to alleviate suffering in here, or to do the work of transforming ourselves from here. But in fact, I think that being mindful of our innerness is perhaps one of the most central features of what needs to be included in any social innovation work. And especially so as we continue to evolve this nascent and emerging field of education in emergencies, and more so when we're faced with the realities of burnout, distress, and trauma, and unexpected complexities and chaos like our pandemic. So with my colleagues at the Global Minds Collective, with local community partners in emergency settings, with students and teachers and mentors, I've been asking, how do we innovate in a way that is deeply impactful, meaningful, and sustainable? And how do we help our learners to innovate in a way that is deeply impactful, meaningful, and sustainable? And what we've learned is that being a social innovator is deeply personal and highly social in terms of its undertaking. It requires a belief in oneself to be an agent of change. It entails a deep awareness and understanding of what the current state is, but also an optimism, an unwavering commitment of imagining and striving for what could be. It involves this very intentional practice of non-judgment and open to learning from multiple perspectives. It necessitates an ability to embrace uncertainty and understand failure as moving forward, rather than engaging in fear and avoidance. And above all, I think that it demands compassion and authenticity, including a very profound acceptance of and connection to self, to others, and to what is bigger than ourselves. And so the question becomes then, how do we facilitate this sort of educational space for practitioners and also for learners in emergency settings? And at the Global Minds Collective, that's what we do. And we do that by disrupting the traditional paradigm of innovation and rather drive mindful social innovation, a pedagogy which we define as the essential and authentic quest of self-transformation and system transformation. Conceptually, mindful social innovation creates spaces for learners to turn inwards, become deep. Sorry, are you also hearing something in the background there with the noise?
Yes,
okay.
I don't know. Maybe we need to mute everyone.
I think we might have to mute everyone, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great, okay. So I'll just begin again. Conceptually then, mindful social innovation means creating the spaces for learners to turn inwards, become deeply aware, radically accept, and heal our internal experiences so that we can, in parallel, ignite and manifest the societal change outwards. Practically, what that means is supporting our learners to cultivate mindful values and behaviors such as coping mechanisms, self-awareness, connecting authentically, nurturing compassion, and simultaneously harnessing a diverse range of innovation tools and techniques like human-centered design, systems thinking, or systems leadership. And so for the rest of the presentation, I'll take you through this conceptual paradigm of mindful social innovation and share how we're also applying this to our recent work in the Democratic Republic of the Congo with school-based youth there. And then I'll end with just some final thoughts. So of note, we at the Global Minds Collective educate, connect, and mobilize mindful social innovators to catalyze self and systems transformation for mental health and well-being. But I believe that our mindful social innovation pedagogy is also applicable to support mindful social innovators who are working within specifically the education and emergencies sector as well. And so to begin, our mindful social innovation pedagogy is based on 4 integrated pillars. They are being and becoming, disruption, systems leadership, and transformational learning. Students receive these activities from each of these pillars in a very intertwined manner, which are adapted and contextualized with our local community partners. And I'll just explain these pillars now in order. Beginning first with being and becoming, this pillar aims to ground students in themselves. And these activities, students learn to engage with self-awareness, the present, and also to begin to act with intention. These activities can include breathing exercise, social emotional learning, psychosocial support, cultural and traditional practices through rituals and communal singing and dancing, or faith and spiritual based practices too. And especially, this has become so helpful for students who are carrying trauma or in settings where suffering is wide scale. And in parallel, we created an intentional effort for students to acknowledge and define their own personal impact so that they can discover, ignite, and actualize themselves as an agent of change. This pillar is the foundation for all other pillars. Next is the disruption pillar, and I won't take too long on this because Gabriela and Mirey, you both explained this really well, but it's just about essentially utilizing the design thinking activities to work through this collective process of sense making, meaning understanding the problem, ideating, brainstorming particular solutions, prototyping, doing a rapid version of field implementation and testing, and adapting as necessary, then implementing and evaluating that final solution that the students come up with, and then eventually disseminating the knowledge that's created. And here we ensure that dissemination is not just about writing something in a high impact journal, but also ensuring that we work very closely with the students and the communities to determine some sort of knowledge mobilization output that is useful to the community. Next is systems leadership. In here, the students begin to develop these core capabilities of what's called a system leadership, which draws on this incredible article called Dawn of Systems Leadership by Peter Singh, Halla Hamilton, and John Kania. And this pillar supports students to see the larger system. So rather than just focusing on the parts of the system that's known to them, they actually start to understand the system from a much larger vantage point. We also start to cultivate reflection and generative conversation so that students can actually hear the point of view of differences, start to build trust and create this sense of collective creativity and collaboration. And finally, this idea of shifting from reacting to co-creating in the future, which is essentially about not just building this inspirational vision for the future, but actually using tools to use and understand the tension between vision and reality to inspire what can actually occur for the future. And so tools that we use here are system mapping, observational techniques, appreciative interviewing, and learning how to breathe into what is uncomfortable and breathe out what could be possible. You can see here it very much does lean on the past two pillars. And our final pillar here is transformational learning. You know all of these really important practices already, so I won't spend too much time on that. But what I will say is this idea of transdisciplinarity, where we welcome individuals of all different levels of experience and expertise to engage in our work. And that's why we pull from civil society, academia, and government, and most importantly, have students and community members be coaches and faculty for our students as well. And so just quickly then, I'll show you how this actually works in process with what we're doing in the DRC with a UKRI funded project on catalyzing youth as mindful social innovators for mental well-being. Here, we are working to create a mindful social innovation lab where school-based war-affected youth will be able to improve mental health and psychosocial well-being in their school and community. The program interweaves psychosocial support with human-centered design, and in return, the students then go co-create a social innovation. Seed funding is also provided in which they will then get to implement and evaluate the actual social innovation that comes out of this. These are our fabulous team members from Hope and Health Vision, Jean-Marie and Lucho, who themselves are youth and have absolutely accelerated all expectations possible. They are mentors to me and have taught me and our team so much about how to engage in decolonization processes, especially when it comes to social innovation. And that's why our phase one was focused on co-creation and adaptation for quite a long time, many months, as you can see, about co-creating and adapting the pedagogy so that we could then create a facilitator's manual and youth workbook that was contextualized to their needs, their hopes, and their desires, and also based on their practices of participation and well-being. In phase two, which is occurring right now, the DRC coaches, Jean-Marie and Lucho, are actually going to train now teachers and the principals, as well as other staff in their organization, on how to actually host this mindful social innovation lab. And they themselves, these DRC fellows, as we call them, will then train the students. These students will then move through that mindful social innovation lab. They'll receive those social innovation tools and techniques, but also work through the psychosocial support curriculum called the Tree of Life. And in parallel, we'll develop these competencies related to systems leadership. And in doing so, they will then be able to come up with a mental well-being social innovation for their school or community. In phase 4, we then provide seed funding for a chosen innovation to be implemented and evaluated. And finally, the knowledge dissemination phase is ongoing. What's exciting is that we have just received a grant from the Canadian government to do something similar in El Salvador with youth and other school-based leaders there over 7 years. So we're looking forward to understanding how we can take our program in the DRC and elsewhere and now adapt it for the Latin American context too. Just looking at time here, I'm going to wrap up by saying that I do want to just address 4 aspects we know in EIE innovation and why the mindful social innovation pedagogy can help support, elevate, and accelerate what we know. In EIE innovation, number 1, we know that there's calls to action by international organizations and governments to prioritize innovation. Let's talk about reimagining, redefining education in emergencies. We also know that there's so many challenges. Innovation is rushed to existence, there's lack of contextualization, they don't often effectively use participatory-based methodologies for community engagement, and there's mistrust when it's a non-local organization if you really want to connect with rural communities. So there is a very important opportunity here for us to connect with grassroots organizations who can become our mentors, who can champion change in their own community if we can just adapt our methodologies to support them best. And this leans into what the last 2 speakers said as well, related to war-affected youth or students as well. They are amongst the most capable individuals. They demonstrate energy, entrepreneurism, and they have a desire to exchange, engage, and be a part of the change process in improving their own lives. Number 3, we know that we need to start shifting away from that victimhood narrative. Programming and innovations are often happening to students rather than with them. So how do we start to move beyond these students being just passive learners to active co-producers of program design, implementation, evaluation, and knowledge mobilization? And 4th, we also know that schools help war-affected youth to attain a sense of normalcy, safety, encourage confidence, purpose, and can also help students realize that they are more than just victims. And so for that way, with the right support for teachers and staff primarily, schools are so well positioned to support these students in becoming social innovators or ambassadors of change in weaving in these activities for self-transformation and systems transformation. Now, I do believe that the way social innovation processes are occurring right now absolutely achieve these 4 points, and they can achieve them very well. But I do also believe that mindful social innovation might be able to take us one step further, and specifically to help us deepen our capacities to reach the essence of our work. And I believe that's to connect to our humanity, to that shared connectedness, to our collective purpose, to our sense of meaning. And what I've experienced myself, and what I've witnessed and heard others experience, is that in times of deep suffering, we can fully embody a transformative type of resilience and growth to emerge from that pain and darkness and become light, peace, and love. And we can bring forward that light, peace, and love for so many others. That's our shared humanity. But in order to do that, we don't have to just reimagine and redefine education in emergencies. We also have to redefine and reimagine what innovation looks like and what it takes to do innovation. And that's why I believe mindful social innovation can do just that. Thank you so much, and please feel free to connect with me by email or social media or LinkedIn if you'd like to chat further. Thank you.
Wow, that was nice. And so much interweaving with what Mirey was
Touched our
saying,
hearts.
with Gabriela was saying. And at the end, you touched our hearts, really. Yes, thank you, Raksha. Thank you. Yes. And at the end, I really do think
Raksha, in our country or in the East, we say على راسي. The Arab, understand. This means that it's amazing. I appreciate very much what you have said.
yes. And I really do think you need to sit with Gabriela and Mirey because you have so much in common. Both of you, all 3 of you, you were talking about the same language and using the same terminology and having the same mindset, which was magnificent, actually. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And it was very fast, but it was very nice. Thank you.
Okay, the questions,
Yes.
although I'm very overwhelmed with what you have said and it's touching my heart. But I will try to. We have a question to Mirey. Could you provide a deeper insight into DogMe toolkit? And the other question, is DogMe is used for French or only English? You have replied to this in the chat box that it's used for English, but it can be used for any other language teaching.
Yeah, so the
Giving
DogMe.
a deeper insight into DogMe toolkit.
Yeah, so the DogMe toolkit. So I was part of the of designing the learning structure of it with other so, and also to structure the LMS for the DogMe, and also to develop the educational materials based on the content provided from the founder, which is Scott. So the structure of the training was we have one seminar, one teaching per one session per week, where we are having the synchronous learning. So the expert, which is Scott, that he's the founder, he's teaching or training the English teachers, presenting every week one activity of the DogMe. So because the DogMe is a set of activities on how you can teach the English in a more communicative way. For example, the guessing games, and I guess this is one of the most known techniques in English teaching. It's how they can apply it in their context and also with refugee context. So we somehow adapted this those techniques to the education emergencies, taking in consideration the context and the difficulties and challenges for English teachers and also learners in those cases. So we were doing it for Jordan and also for Lebanon at the same time, and because it was COVID, so we managed to have it for both countries at the same time. And then after this, the session online, there is content available for them on the learning management system, which is Moodle, for them to study during the week and to practice in an asynchronous way. So we applied what we call the cognitive apprenticeship methodology on designing this this intervention, and then they were asked to practice. And also record themselves or give a report on how they practice with their own class. And then they got an immediate and formative feedback from the trainer himself. So the idea was to have this cycle, like complete cycle, where you are training and modeling for the learner, the scaffolding, practicing, reflecting, and then doing it again. And it's a very like DogMe it's known methodology for teaching, but also it can be also used for teaching other languages because it's mainly to practice the language and communicate. Do you want to know more? That's if you want, you can also contact Mosaic. They would love to. They are now looking for volunteers. Because they're designing a new intervention. They're looking for volunteers, English teachers, that they can give their own feedback on their teaching.
Okay, so the DogMe toolkit is designed by Mosaic, and they can train people or train English teachers to work on using this.
To use DogMe methodology or pedagogy, sorry, in their teaching.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, another question for Raksha, social innovation cycle. You mean at the beginning you explained some steps, and you said that it's similar to what Gabriela mentioned and Mirey. You mean that the students are, the difference is that the students here are creating or reaching solutions for social problems or social conflict, right? If we're mentioning that it's similar in Gabriela context, they are creating products, solid solutions. But in your initiative, they are creating social.
This is a very good question, Radwa. And it has honestly depended on what situation. So sometimes the outcome has been technology focused, an actual product was created, like an online platform to support Indigenous youth, for example, and their cultural identity. There was another example where a cookbook was actually created to support destigmatization processes. There's another process related to changing relationship processes between nurses and educators. So in this way, we define the innovation as any initiative, such as a policy, a program, a product, a process, anything. It just depends on the community and the students, yeah.
Okay, so the point is that we are giving the students the opportunity to think, create, communicate together, teamwork, whatever, so they can come up with a solution to whatever problem is around them in their community.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes, right. Yep. With the definition of innovation being not just technology focused, but anything.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I got the point now. It's amazing. It's amazing and very inspiring, Raksha. Thank you very much for sharing your experience with us.
Okay, I do think we are reaching, unfortunately, we are reaching the end. All times that are enjoyable have an end, unfortunately. I'm going to wrap up and to say in a nutshell what we have discussed or what we have heard.
The voice is cutting, Dr. Mona. The voice is cutting.
Okay. Raja was telling us about a methodology that is used in Jordan to assess or monitor the quality of education, and a couple of the main takeaways have been great teaching and learning is actually not
Dr.
enough.
Mona, can you use
Yes.
it's still cutting, very cutting.
What about now? Is it better?
No.
No? Yes. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay. Now, okay, I'm going to repeat what Raja was saying. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Nicely?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Some of the takeaways from Raja, EdTech is not enough, great teaching and learning is not enough. What actually is very important and very paramount in the process of monitoring quality education is parental involvement, school leadership, the effective support for girls has to be seen as a priority, and quality education requires consistent monitoring of schools, and it is not one-stop action that is done and then we think we have done everything. And it was very nice to hear from Raja about the perceptional surveys that are delivered to teachers and students and how they are also involved in the monitoring process. Then we came to Gabriela, who took us to Kakuma camp in Kenya and told us about the 3 months project that was she took part there, and it had to do with helping and empowering refugee youth in order to find solution for 7 problems through human-centered creation and human-centered design methodology or pedagogy. And this was used as a needs analysis for upcoming courses. And she told us also about the series of challenges this project has faced and how difficult communication has been, but also how difficult it is to think about contextualization, how important that is, and how long the ideation process can take. Now, and she told us about the non-academic and the academic outcomes of the project. Then we went to Mirey, and Mirey told us about the opportunity for change through active learning. And it is what is needed is actually that the students are involved actively in their learning And this change in pedagogy can have very important outcomes that might lead one day to social impact. And she told us about different case studies and samples where this was implemented, like NFHAM and like DOGME methodology, and what happened in Jusur. And then at the very end came Raksha, who told us about mindful social innovation and the different steps and phases we can, as educators, undertake in order to go through the whole process of mindful social innovation or transformative learning, and how this is actually all based on the phase one, which is the most important phase of self-realization, self-awareness, and being. It was to be and to become. To be and to become. Yes, to be and to become. Yes, and how important that was. At the end, I want to thank you all for being there. I will be sending you the recording, and I want you please to follow Beyond Border on LinkedIn, and Beyond Border has now also a Twitter account, and please stay tuned because there will be a lot of very interesting events upcoming, and this was the very first in a series of webinars, and very happy to have this diverse participants. I can see Jordan, Chad, United States, Canada, Geneva, Kenya, very interesting, Egypt, Belgium. I am very happy to have you on this webinar, and please follow Beyond Borders and stay tuned to next activities. Yes.
Thank you everyone for your
yes.
time. It was a pleasure. As Beyond Borders, employee or member, and as person, as me, Radwa. Thank you very much.
Yes, and Beyond Borders team is actually a small team, a very small team, but we do believe that collaboratively we can really reach a lot and achieve a lot, because we do not think that it is right to have one-man show projects or to implement things individually, but especially in the area of education emergencies, we need to work collaboratively. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And the recording will be sent to you. Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.